Um, I want to keep an eye on the time as well. So I'd like to now introduce to you our next speaker. I'm just going to remove that spotlight so you can relax. And I will bring Kay on. There we go. Hi, Kay.
Hello,
Hello and welcome. I'm so excited to have you here with us.
excited
Um,
to be here.
Thank you for doing this. And really, my first question is, would you like to tell everyone a little bit about your practice? Tell us a little bit about where you live. I can see your incredible studio wall right behind you. And I know your practice is diverse. You're a weaver and you stitch also, you dye as well, and it's just incredible. So I can't wait to hear more about your practice.
So, I come, I'm a retired teacher, special education. So I come from a world of data and schedules and rule following, report writing. So it's a very, very structured world. And when I was thinking about um, my creative practice, I wrote down exactly the same words that Claire wrote down. And that is that I was really very good at following patterns for sewing clothes or embroidery, crochet, whatever it was. But then the opportunity came to do something different. And that sort of combined with retirement, where it's like, okay, what haven't I done in my life that I would really like to do that's different? And so I wanted to be able to be creative without a pattern, and not having my materials and my colors dictated to me. So that was what I wanted to do. So soothing stitch, I again, like Claire had done artful stitch. So that was the first introduction. Um, and I had met you in 2019 when I was in London and had taken a class with you. And I remember coming out of that thinking, oh, she's not going to judge me. She's not going to tell me exactly what to do. She's going to say, "Oh, well, what do you think about this?" And so my opinion mattered, and it really hadn't mattered before. So that was something very, very different for me, was your ability to look at what I was doing and give me suggestions, but not be directive or judgmental. And that was very freeing for me.
Okay, I'm glad you took that approach so positively because when I was in your shoes, when I was a student, and the teacher who went on to become, my mentor and who I admire the most, always said these things, gave feedback so obliquely that I was left wondering for days that what had she actually meant?
Yeah,
And the approach was never direct, right? It was
yeah,
always a questioning and a probing, and as you said, what do you think?
yeah,
And be put on hook for that. Like, what do I think about something rather than being offered a direct solution? Was for me at the time so frustrating because I just wanted to be told. It's like, do XYZ
yeah,
and this assignment would be done.
yes.
Whereas I was being led on this process of discovery, and I was not as gracious as you. I went, crying and flailing my arms and like, really, come on. Um, but once I learned that, I knew that was the right way of um, bringing out the best in someone. Because when you question yourself, when you investigate what is inside of you, that's when original work really happens, rather than giving ready-made templates and recipes and saying, okay, go do it and you get an A plus
Right,
and be done
right.
with it. So I'm so grateful that, you are saying so graciously that you were open to that. You were fine. You were not feeling
Yeah,
frustrated.
I retired.
I think maybe that has something to do with the wisdom, which I clearly lacked in my 20s.
So did I.
Oh. So you are based in the US, in
Yes,
Massachusetts, right?
Massachusetts, yes,
Uh,
yes,
and so is that the middle of the day for you when we have sessions?
yes. It's about 2 o'clock, which is perfect for me because my time is my own. I now have this space that's my own that I don't really have the courage yet to call a studio. It's my sewing room, my weaving room. It's nobody else wanted it, so it's mine. Um, but yeah, so now I get to live in a world of sketchbooks and colored pencils and different things that I never thought I would live in this world. So
Well, you are inhabiting it most beautifully. But I want to take you back to that moment when you decided to join us, right?
yeah,
And you had done the 1 week kind of dip your toes immersion. Um, what made you really decide like this was the right time for you and this is what you wanted to do?
I felt like there was enough structure. The main structure being what you talked about before with technique and practice and soul and how those things fit together, what the progression can look like for someone who is working their way through a creative process. So there was that for me to lean on and look at, but it was also the other people in the group. And I think for me the tone and the tenor of the instruction and the interactions and hearing how people talk to each other, what they said to each other, and that was always so supportive and inviting, that it was like, yeah, I think I can try this. I'm I'm tired of looking in books for what I'm going to do next. I think this is something that I really want to try. Um, and so that was the moment.
Oh, that sounds amazing. That journey of looking at books and trying to figure things out. I've been down that road and oh my God, it just
Yeah.
takes forever because
Mhm.
you go down rabbit holes where you perhaps your time is not best well spent in
Right.
those rabbit holes. Um,
We're getting to the end of a project, and I have some of them hanging up there, and looking at it and saying, "Oh, I don't really like that." You know, I just no, I don't want that in my house. I'll finish that and I'll give it away because there's nothing in there that's me. It There's nothing that was called forth from me except my time, and my sewing machine. So it's very different.
you're so right. I think when we start to put more of ourselves into our work, it starts to become more meaningful to
Mhm.
us. And I personally think more potent. So I trained in design first before I moved into art and more about kind of making work, which was about the way I saw the world. And design is all about solving a problem and looking at an externality and going at it with the lens that this is the problem and I'm going to propose a solution
Mhm.
based on, you know, uh, a market study or some the ideal person who would like to buy it. So you're always driven from something that is outside of you, and it never quite felt so fulfilling. Although I was
Right.
really good at it and I could do it, with my eyes closed, but it just lacked something for me. It's like I'm not really telling the stories that I want to tell, and who am I as a person. um and one day I had this epiphany. It's like, if I don't make work which is really about how I feel and think, then
Mhm.
these stories are just going to die with me, right? No one will ever know that I was here and this is how I looked at the world. And even if it is just from my kids,
Mhm.
will they really know how I experienced things? So I think that was the moment. It was like, I just have to pull back from all of that and really make work which is about myself and my authentic self. So
Yes.
yeah, and I think all of us in the group are on that journey. Um, so I would love to jump into your slides, but I did have uh, one more question before we did that. And again, it was to do with, how have you um, found that your work has changed since joining? What has happened? Is it is it the creative process? Is it the outcomes? Is it all of it? Is it the mindset? And as you said, you're still a bit hesitant to call that room your studio. So
Right.
maybe it happens in stages.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about that. How have you been impacted since joining the membership? And what has been the biggest transformation, I think, according to you, whether it is within yourself or with your work?
I mean, it's happened on multiple levels. As I said before, for me to go in a store and buy a sketchbook, I would have never done that. For me to claim this space and organize it and saying, oh yeah, I'm going to use this new material or this new pen or whatever. So there's that. There's also being exposed to so many different types of stitch and then wanting to dive into it and try it, spend a few weeks, doing chicken scratch or spend a few weeks doing stitches from a book I just bought. There's that, but then there's also an internal change, and that has to do with what I value, and what I see. I was out walking with my husband the other day, and I saw some vines that had intertwined. And whereas before I would have looked at that differently, this time it was like, oh, that's really beautiful. That could inform something. I think about the words that I've chosen, excuse me, like Claire did. My word last year was open. And at the end of the year, I'm like, well, how am I different about this word this year than last year? And at the time, I couldn't define it. But the other day in the car, I'm saying to myself, okay, so now I'm listening to Bollywood Sufi music. I would never do that before. you know i've I've gone here and I've gone there and I've done this and I've done that, and I would have never done those things before. So it's kind of looking back at the year and saying, so that was a year like no other year in my life, but the influences are from the other women, and I'm sure we'd take men, but the other women in the group that have uh shown their work, shown their likes, meeting with them personally, and the rapport and the conversation and the influence, the knowledge that people share in the group has a huge impact. Also because I'm looking for it. That's something I'm specifically looking for now.
I was going to say, I think it's a two-way street, isn't
Mhm.
it? You only receive what you're ready to receive. And when you're actively looking for a transformation yourself, that's when it happens. I think you have
Right.
to just be open to that. And which brings me back to what I was sharing with Claire. I think curiosity is like the central thread that flows through everyone who's part of this group, that, people are just curious to see and open to see what something is like, and whether it's experiencing different kind of music, Bollywood Sufi music, or food, or going to places that you would have never gone in, or ways of being. I
Yes.
think, as Nicholas Wilton, the artist, who I hugely admire, he always says that your art is never separate from your life.
Mhm.
Like they are interwoven, and
Mhm.
whatever's happening inside one always affects the other. And if your art is changing, you can bet that your life is changing.
Yes.
And it's when they are in sync, that's when the magic happens. So, oh, fantastic. Let's look at your beautiful, beautiful work. Okay, so here we go. I love this, Kay, by the way. I love that, it's painting and it's stage. And of course, it's your love
I'm
of
weaving.
nature. Yes.
Is my weaving down there?
Yeah, down there. Yes, it's kind of pulling in all of the elements together. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about this work then.
So one of the things that I like to dabble with is painted cloth.
Mhm.
Um, so I have Inktense pencils that I use to do the background of the K. I mean, I needed some structure for this. It was one of the first things that I did. So I've looked at a bunch of different sources of inspiration, incorporated some, changed some, added others, um, to do something that was meaningful to me. I like metallic threads.
Oh, you're brave. You are brave. This is the one thing that I actively avoid using in my
Yeah.
work.
I just found a whole book on how to use them. So
Oh, there you go. So we'll take top tips from you then. Um,
metallic threads and silk threads. It's
oh,
just
there you go. And of course, you have to pick up the most challenging material. I love that. This also, I mean, I love, first of all, the way that you have photographed it. There's such a sense of being in that room with you, and how you like to bring um, your art into your life. And I think this is something important to you, isn't it? That the
Mhm.
ability to be living with something on an everyday basis.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of what I do, I'm just driven by this. I was brought up by my mother who grew up in the on the prairie in Kansas, and practicality was always the most important thing. So I do tend to be very practical in the things that I do. I like to have uses for them. So this the fabric, the colored fabric, I bought on Goldhawk Street in London. So it's bringing that into it. The leaves were cut from paper that my daughter and I had taken a week-long course in bookmaking, how to create books and sew books and all of that. So that was paper from the bookmaking class that I embroidered. And the interesting thing about this project was that no time did I really have a sense of what it would look like in the end. Even to the last few moments, it was, what am I going to do with it? And it was meaningful to me because it pointed some things out to me, about trying to be creative, and that is that, I didn't always know where I was going with this. And I really like how it came out in the end, and it's in my dining room under glass. And yeah, I love it.
It is beautiful. And I think you touched upon something really important, that without knowing how it'll turn out,
Mhm.
you still went ahead and did it.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about, right? It's not about reverse engineering something and kind of having this finished idea in our heads and
Right.
saying, right, this is what I'm going to make. And then you kind of follow all the steps to get there, but actually trusting the process and saying, I don't really know where this is taking me, but it's going to take me somewhere new and exciting.
Hmm. Yes.
And I think this is what I try to really, really emphasize on within the membership and the way I teach is just trust it, trust the process, and something beautiful and meaningful will emerge. So kudos for doing that and actually illustrating it with this piece. This is your bojagi, right? This is so
Yes. That
pretty.
is my bojagi. And so bojagi for me is a work in progress. Um, just doing it, just learning how to do those seams and how to do that stitching. I think this was the second piece that I did. Um, I have a permanent bin for bojagi with materials I've bought and threads and fabric that I want to use. You know, it's something I want to continue to do. I look at it and I'm very pleased that I did it and that I experimented with it. And I also see the things that I want to do differently.
Mhm.
So that's that's a piece for me that informs me in terms of where I want to go.
I think this is always a process of this is constantly evolving, right? The way you look at this piece now would probably change 6 months later, and your work will also change. So I love that you've included this and as a work in progress, and your the way you're approaching also is a work in progress. So that's fantastic. Um, Okay, I was really excited that you wanted to include this because this is like the newest all singing, all dancing kid on the block.
So this was in response to the Advent, the
The Nourish
challenge.
Advent that we did back in December. Yes.
Yes, which gave
Um,
me a different perspective on how to do something, you know? To take this time and watch this prompt and then just do it and just keep going with it. And, yes, have an overall plan, but let it evolve while you're doing it. And there was a spontaneity to
yeah.
that I really liked. Um, I used stitches that I hadn't stitched before. I had painted all of the cloth in there. Um, and again, it was, how do I respond to a prompt? Would I do it differently later? Well, it doesn't matter because it's done, again, it's part of the evolution.
Absolutely. I think because this project was kind of um, there was a different pace to it. Usually we stay with the prompt for an entire month. So there is a lot of time to ease into it, to reflect on it, and to build it slowly over the weeks. However,
Yes,
this was like daily prompts, and then you had to
yes,
do a little bit every day. Um, so what I love about it is that it sort of starts to bring the different elements that you love, the spontaneity of paint, and then you've incorporated that, and it's so different to your earlier pieces, which are quite structured. Even the way you've arranged the leaves on
yes,
that table mat is very precise. There's this sense of precision about them. But I can see you're coming out of that way of making, and this is getting a bit more looser, and you are. Uh, this is what it feels. It's just a different way of making, and you talked about evolution, and that's how it happens. We begin with what we find easy and safe, and then we start taking risks, which
yes,
which always leads us to new territory. And even though it's scary in the beginning, it's just so rewarding. So I can see that happening now, even in the 5 slides that you've shared with us. From precision, we are going to like being a more in a flow state, right? And
yes. And it's at this point that I say to myself, I am never ever going to go into a store again and buy a project. It's just, why would I do that? You know? Um, what do I do with the ones I already have that I don't want anymore? It's yeah, it's just, yeah. I'm moving along.
Oh, that you said it. You said it. Actually, I used to feel that exactly. It's like, why would first of all people make these the projects where you know exactly what to do? And for a long time, I struggled with it. Just like, why make it? But I think they have a place. I
Mhm.
feel that when we're learning the alphabet, we do need that, in our
Yes,
very initial stages. And it kind of reminds me of the time that my mom bought me some kits in one summer holidays. Maybe I was like 9 or 10, I don't remember quite which. But it was really just following that. These are your threads, and this is where you would place them. And you already knew what it would look like because they would have
absolutely.
given a picture of it.
Right.
But I think as a first step, they are perfectly valid.
It does. It has its place. It has its place. And creativity is it's a funny thing.
Think we all take baby steps, right? In that direction. We slowly leave behind what feels safe and take one more step and one more step and one more step
Yes.
towards where we're trying to get to. So I think this one is the final slide of your work, right? So I'm going to stop here because I have one more